A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, we continue our adventures as Uncle Luke sends the droids on a secret mission to see Jabba the Hutt. When they check in, the droids are challenged by Jabba's henchmen. For those of you wondering why he looks like that, his mother was from the mysterious Twi'lek race of the planet Ryloth, and his father was a sousaphone. So, after being granted an audience with Jabba, R2 plays his message from Uncle Luke. He's like, I need a reservation for your Mar-a-Lago resort. I'm a bit strapped for cash right now, but I'll trade you these droids, who definitely don't have any weapons hidden inside them. And Jabba's like, sure, that doesn't seem sus at all. That night, Princess Mom sneaks into the hotel, disguised as a bounty hunter. She hits the defrost button on the popsicle formerly known as Dad, making sure to catch him before he falls to the ground. Or maybe not. As Mom and Dad are reunited, they hear laughter from behind a strategically placed curtain. If only there was someone around who could identify why it was there.
It's a trap!
But there wasn't, and they get captured by Mr. the Hutt. With the rest of his party already checked in, Uncle Luke finally shows up. He is like, don't underestimate my power. And then he falls down a trapdoor, like he's auditioning to be a Scooby-Doo villain. In the dungeon below, Luke has to use all his Jedi training to fight a fearsome monster. And when I say Jedi training, I really mean some animal bones. And a human skull. Great to see that all those lessons on Dagobah totally paid off. Not surprisingly, Jabba is a bit pissed about his favorite monster being killed. So he decides to feed Uncle Luke to an even bigger monster. And this time he chooses a totally bone-free environment. Facing the Sarlacc beast, Luke launches a carefully choreographed escape plan. While he's systematically dismembering the crew, Princess Mom shows Jabba the meaning of erotic asphyxiation. But let's not forget my dad's valuable contribution. He's told to aimlessly stumble around and crash into things. Yep, great job on that. So after totally wiping out Jabba and his entire crew, Uncle Luke goes back to Dagobah for a Jedi slumber party. And Yoda's like, you know when I said that you had to complete your training before facing Vader? Well, it turns out you have to face Vader to complete your training. And Luke's like, I'm starting to think this training program doesn't have any syllabus whatsoever. And then, as Yoda's life force starts to fade away, Luke asks one last question. So, are there any siblings you want to tell me about? And Yoda's like, over there you should look. And then he dies just to avoid answering the question. Fortunately for Luke, Force Ghost Ben appears. And he's like, you know when I said it was okay to make out with Princess Leia? And Luke's like, yep, I've totally been acting on that advice. And Ben's like, what I told you was true from a certain point of view. And Luke's like, I don't like the direction this conversation is heading. And Ben's like, dude, she's totally your sister. You must have felt something. And Luke's like, no, I swear, we just kissed. And Ben is strangely disappointed. Back at the Rebel headquarters, the senator in charge of exposition briefs everyone on the plan to destroy the new Death Star. She also reveals that for some reason, Dad has been promoted. That's pretty impressive, considering he's been asleep for the entire last year. They were like, for excelling in the field of counting sheep and overcoming extreme drowsiness, we're totally promoting you to the rank of general. So, while Lando volunteers for a suicide mission right into the center of the Death Star, General Solo and friends set off on a nature trail on Endor. As they are admiring the delightful fauna, they just happen to encounter some scout troopers. These elite Imperial forces are trained in the art of avoiding everything, except trees. As they continue their carefree stroll through the forest, Chewbacca makes an interesting discovery. A piece of rotting meat just hanging from a tree. If only there was someone around who could identify why it was there.
It's a trap!
But there wasn't. So they get strung up by the Ewoks. And no, that's not a euphemism. As the hungry little carnivores prepare to eat my entire family tree, Uncle Luke uses his awesome command of the Force to put on a magic show. He's like, pick a card, any card. And they're like, that's such a coincidence. David Blaine was here last week. And Luke's like, really? How did he go down with this crowd? And they're like, he was delicious. So Luke raises his game and levitates 3PO. Later on, everyone is chilling in a treehouse as 3PO summarizes their adventures. Because apparently, listening to someone tell a story in a robotic voice is what passes for entertainment. After the show, Uncle Luke brings Princess Mom up to speed. He's like, I just found out that we're brother and sister. And she's like, that's really interesting, but I guess I've always known. And he's like, but we've totally made out together, with tongues and everything. And she's like, that's okay. Everyone does that on Alderaan. We like to think of ourselves as being the Alabama of our galaxy. And Luke's like, roll Tide. The next day, Uncle Luke meets up with Vader for a tour of the new Death Star, and what would later become known as the worst take your child to work day in the history of the program. Meanwhile, my parents lead their army of flesh-eating teddy bears to take down the shield generator. After carefully considering various military strategies, they decide on the Benny Hill offensive. Unfortunately for them, an entire legion of stormtroopers arrives on the scene. The Death Star is fully operational. And there's a fleet of Imperial battleships too. If only there was someone around who could succinctly summarize the situation. Anyone. Anyone at all.
It's a trap!
Thanks, buddy. We got there in the end. On the Death Star version 2.0, Uncle Luke meets the Emperor and he's like, there's good in my father. I can tell. And then he beats the living crap out of him with a lightsaber. The Emperor's like, dude, that was brutal. You're going to be a great Lord of the Sith. And Luke's like, this may come as a shock, but I'll never join the dark side. And the Emperor's like, funny you should say that. And as he totally fries him with several million volts, he's like, so how are you enjoying the current situation? You know you're really not putting up much resistance. Come on, that's no way to conduct yourself. Finally, Vader's like, dude, you have to stop. That's just too many electrical puns. And the Emperor's like, yep, guilty as charged. Which inexcusable wordplay causes Vader to launch him into the reactor core. Down on the planet's surface, Chewbacca with his army of mini-me's stage an attack on the Imperial forces. This finally allows my parents to blow up the shield generator, and Lando finally gets to blow up the Death Star. So thanks to a bunch of teddy bear terrorists, and an abundance of electrical puns, the Empire is utterly defeated. And everyone is completely safe from the evil of the dark side. Well, for the next 30 years anyway.